Hello, ceramic students. This is Mrs. Reamer coming to you live from, not really live, I'm recording, from my classroom. This is the start for your next project. And basically what I'm doing is, and your next project is a rattle project. I have my chunk of clay that I just pulled out of my bag. Here's the bag that I have the clay in. Just fold it out. I have a piece of dental floss. Okay, dental floss works great for cutting clay. So I'm gonna like take my little piece of clay off, not clay, my little piece of dental floss off, and wrap it around my fingers. So you have this whole chunk of clay here. You don't need this whole thing to create your double pinch pot, okay? Because that's what we're gonna start with first. So what I need to do is trim this because the excess stuff is going to be what you are going to use for your other bits and pieces. So for some of you, if you have a really big chunk of clay, you might want about half. Okay, so these aren't going to be huge projects, but you want a little extra clay. So I'm going to do a little less than half. Take it off. Okay, and then we take our ball of clay like this, and I'm going to feel it and see how big it is. That's still a big chunk of clay. So I think I'm going to actually take a little bit more off, and that's okay. So I would say for most of you, you probably want to take about half off, okay? So I'm going to take that little bit off right here too. Now, these chunks of clay, I'm going to put them back into my bag of clay, because if you don't do that, what happens? Oh, wait, your project dries out and then you don't have clay to use. And well, that sucks, okay? So clay back in there. I now have my ball of clay, turning it into a nice sphere. We want it relatively even in shape. Okay, so ball of clay, here we go. All right, now I want to take that lovely piece of dental floss again, and I'm going to look at it, and I want to divide it in half. Okay, so my ball of clay, I'm going to divide into half. If you don't divide it into half, then, well, it doesn't work nearly as well as if you, if you just divide it in half, guys. It's how this whole process works. All right, so now I have two relatively even pieces of clay, okay? They're about the same thickness. All right, so I take this little ball of clay like this. You have already learned how to do a pinch pot. This is a double pinch pot. It is different, okay? I take my half ball of clay, I cup it in the palm of my hand, and I gently press, okay? I start in the center, and I just squish it out like this, okay? So see, like that. Make sure that this right here is the same thickness as this right here. So this and this. Notice how chubby this is right here. This needs to stay fat. If you pinch the tar out of this, this project does not work. So don't pinch it to death, okay? Real gentle and slow. Make sure it's even, okay? And that's gonna stay nice and fat, okay? Tap it a little bit so it's nice and flat. Tap it again. There we go. Now it's really nice. See how flat that is? That's really good. Okay. All right. I'm going to set that right there. Okay. And then I'm going to come and do this one. Okay. The goal is that they are going to be the same size. Okay. So pinch this out right here. Got to remember to keep my hands where you can see them. I had to draw an X and a box and everything because I noticed on some of my other videos, I get working and then I pull it closer and closer to myself and I'm like, oh, they can't see it. So I'm trying to be better about that. Okay, so flatten that. All right, so now hopefully they're about the same size, and voila, they are pretty much the same size. I am going to pinch them just a smidge more, okay? Just a tiny bit, because I want to make sure that they're even in thickness, okay? All right, that's pretty good. All right, so we have these bits right here. Okay, so these are all set and ready to go. Now, this is a rattle project. So how do we get a rattle project that is soft like this to rattle? Glad you asked. Okay, so we go back through and we take a little bit of that clay that we just, put away, just a tiny bit. And this is even a lot, okay? So I take off little teeny tiny bits of clay and I roll them into balls. Okay, so I've got these teeny tiny little balls. If you do giant balls, it's very clunky sounding. But if you do teeny tiny little balls, and you could even go smaller than this, I've had some people do like even quarter this size. You could do an assorted size, okay? So I just go through and I just wind up, roll up little balls of clay. I have 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This rest of this clay, make sure it goes back in your bag. You can use this for later stuff. Okay, so I have roughly 8 little balls of clay. Now, if I were to just toss these in here like this, they stick together. See, look, they're stuck in there. They're not going to come out. They're going to stick to the interior of your project. We don't want that. We want it to actually tinkle, make a tinkling sound when we fire it. So what I do is I take some paper towel. Doesn't matter what kind of paper towel you use. And you just take your little balls of clay. Now, if I were to just do this right here, there's one giant ball of clay. We don't want that. We want it to actually sit into like this, okay? So we want the clay separate. So we go, whoops. Usually I go in the corner. I do one, and then I roll it, and I do a couple more, and then I roll it some more, and then I add some more in. And then I just keep adding my little clay balls into the folds, okay? And then I roll it up, and then I tuck it, and I just turn it into a ball. And then I put it right there, all right? Now, if you do this properly and you have a nice chunk of paper towel, they're not going to fall out of there no matter what you do, okay? Now, I've had several students over the years say, but Mrs. Reamer, there's paper in there. It's not actually going to rattle because, well, there's paper in there. Well, I have to tell you that my kiln gets so hot that it burns up that paper. It turns this clay to stone. So don't worry, don't fret. It's all good. It will totally burn up in the kiln. Okay, so I come through. I'm using my scoring tool, well, because I'm here at school, and you can use a fork or you can use, whoops, it's falling out, hold on, like that. Or you can use your paper clip. Now, granted, notice how this just looks all scruffed up, right? That's what we want. Oh, can you see that? Okay, so like, see those little scratches? Okay, you want lots of good scratches. If they're not good scratches, they're not scratched enough, okay? So then I come through, I take my water. The score marks and the water turn to slip, okay? And slip is what binds your project together, okay? So we come through and we just add a little bit of water here, all right? And then we take and we go squish, okay? Now, this is where you have to be somewhat gentle, okay? If you're not gentle, well, sometimes you kill your project. And we don't want you to kill your project. Okay, I just realized I don't have a wooden tool. I'm going to pause for 1 second. I'm going to go grab that. See if I can do this properly. All right, so I went over and grabbed my lovely handy dandy metal tool. Not metal, that's not metal, my wooden tool. All right, and we're going to just gently go like this along the edge. Now, if you run like this, you might possibly indent it more. We don't want to indent it, okay? We want to run across our seam, okay? You have to be gentle with this. I'm not going to lie. This is the trickiest part of this project right here. We're going to squish it together some, okay? So I'm squishing it together, okay? And then I just come through and I go like that. I'm being gentle with it. If you are manhandling it and being all rough, well, unfortunately, it doesn't like that, okay? So we just come through, we seal up our lovely seam, okay? Now you can still see mine. You can't see it on my recording because, well, my Elmo is not the best quality. The image is awful, but it is still slightly there. It will go away after I work with it for a time being, okay? So, but right now, all right, so the awesome thing, this is physics, guys. Any of you take physics, okay? and I don't know, I'm not a physics teacher, but I do know that it is physics, okay? So art and science do go together, okay? So there's a theory, and it's something about pressure, equal pressure. I need to talk to the physics teacher to get this down better. But because I am pressing on the exterior of this clay, so like I'm cupping it and stuff, the reason it doesn't collapse is because there is equal pressure pushing out. I'm exerting the same amount of pressure on the inside. The air that is trapped on the inside is therefore allowing this to not collapse, which is kind of cool if you think about it, okay? So here is step number 1, okay? And this is super important because, well, get this right, and then we'll go on to the second step. So what would be the next step in this process? This is plastic, so it's super soft, okay? Like if I were to like squash it, it would totally flatten. We don't want to do that, okay? The next step in this would be to let it dry some. That does not mean leave it out in the air to dry on its own. If you do that, your projects will not work. What we do is we take our board or your plate, a plastic plate, something that's hard, cutting board. I've seen students use cutting boards, whatever else. We're going to set this in on our board, and then we're going to take a garbage bag. This is a giant 13, maybe it might be a 15-gallon garbage bag, okay? We're going to take that. I'm going to set my garbage bag right here, okay? I'm going to open it up. I'm going to carefully put my project inside, and then I'm going to take and I'm going to pull the sides up, okay? Sorry, this is as good as it gets when it comes to recording in my classroom because I just don't have the technology. Okay, so my project is right here, my board is right here, my bag is right here. If I were to just leave this like this open, it dries out. But if I come through and I take and I twist the bottom of my bag, okay, twist the bottom of my bag and then flip it underneath, my project will stay good for a day or two, all right? Maybe even longer because this clay is very plastic right now. Now, if it were drying out, I would put some wet paper towel in with it, damp, not sopping wet, damp paper towel, but it's not drying out yet. So this is where we're at for step number 1. We have created our double pinch pot. We put our beads inside, and then it's just going to sit for a day. All right. Have a good one, people.